We all know the sound. It's an unmistakable declaration of elegance, power, and modern femininity. For decades, the high heel has been the ultimate staple of women's fashion. From the glamour of Marilyn Monroe to the power suits of the 1980s. It's a shoe designed to turn heads, lengthen the silhouette, and command a room. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about this iconic shoe is completely wrong? What if the high heel wasn't invented for women at all? In fact, what if its original purpose had absolutely nothing to do with fashion, glamour, or beauty, but was instead a weapon of war? To find the true birthplace of the high heel, we have to look past the runways of Paris and New York and travel back over 1,000 years to the rugged, sun-baked plains of ancient Persia. Back in the 10th century, the Persian military possessed one of the most feared cavalry units in the ancient world. These soldiers were legendary for their horseback archery, able to fire deadly, precise shots while riding at a full gallop. But doing that required immense stability, and if a rider's foot slipped out of the stirrup, they would tumble to the ground and be trampled. As a solution to this hazard, Persian shoemakers added a distinct protruding heel to the bottom of the soldier's leather riding boots. When the rider stood up in their stirrups, that heel locked perfectly over the metal bar, securing the soldier in place. It gave them the leverage they needed to twist, aim, and shoot their short bows without losing their balance. The high heel was a piece of military technology strictly for men and no more feminine than a shield or a sword. For centuries, these heels stayed exactly where they belonged. But as empires expanded and global trade routes opened, these rugged combat boots caught the attention of a completely different crowd. So how did a dirty, functional piece of military gear transition from the dust of the battlefield into the most exclusive, opulent royal courts of Western Europe? The turning point came at the tail end of the 16th century. In 1599, the Shah of Persia sent his first diplomatic delegation to Europe, visiting royal courts in Russia, Germany, and Spain. The European aristocrats, seeing the delegates, were instantly mesmerized. The Persian soldiers looked rugged, virile, and exotic. And right at the bottom of their outfits were those distinct heeled boots. European noblemen quickly copied the style, but as the trend spread across the continent, the heel underwent a radical transformation. It stopped being about riding horses and started being about social standing. Think about the physical reality of the 17th century. The streets of London and Paris were not paved or clean. They were choked with mud, horse manure, and open sewage. Walking on these filthy pavement was already difficult on normal shoes, but the heels made it completely impossible to walk through the filth. If you walked anywhere, your shoes were ruined by the filth. Therefore, if a man walked into a room wearing delicate, elevated leather heels, it sent a message to everyone present that the wearer didn't need to walk. They had horses, they had carriages, and they had servants to carry me. The heel became the genius status symbol of wealth. King Louis XIV, the Sun King, the absolute ruler of France, took this obsession seriously. If you look closely at his most famous official portrait, painted by Hyacinthe Rigaud in 1701, your eyes are immediately drawn to his legs. Louis was deeply insecure about his height. He stood at just 5'4". To compensate, he wore shoes with towering 4-inch heels, which were often elaborately decorated with battle scenes. But Louis didn't just want to look taller. He wanted to control his court. He passed a strict royal edict declaring that only members of the highest nobility were permitted to wear heels colored in a specific, expensive crimson red. The red heel became the 17th century equivalent of a VIP velvet rope. If you were in the king's good graces, you wore red heels. If you fell out of favor, your red heels were stripped away. For over a century, the high heel was the exclusive domain of the ultra-wealthy, hyper-powerful European male. It was a tool of political dominance and aristocratic pride. But fashion is a fickle beast, and just as men consolidated their grip on the high heel, a quiet rebellion was brewing among the women of Europe that drove women to cross the gender line and seize this ultimate masculine power symbol for themselves. We have to look at a broader cultural movement that took place in the late 17th century. Women began looking at men's fashion and intentionally adopting elements of it to assert their own power and equality. They began cutting their hair short, adding military-style epaulets to their jackets, smoking pipes, and, most shockingly of all, putting on high heels. By wearing the heel, women were claiming the same status, height, and aristocratic privilege that men enjoyed. Once women stepped into the high heel, something fascinating happened. Men didn't want to share their status symbol, and as the 18th century progressed, the design of the shoe began to split along stark gender lines. Men's heels became lower, wider, and much more functional, built for walking, riding, and overseeing estates. Women's heels, however, became narrower, more curved, and distinctly ornamental. They were designed to make the foot look smaller and the arch more pronounced under long, heavy skirts. And then came the crash. In 1789, the French Revolution to pull down the king shook the world. Suddenly, anything associated with the aristocracy, wealth, or the royal court became incredibly dangerous. If you walked out into the streets of Paris wearing high heels, you weren't seen as fashionable. You were seen as an enemy of the people, and you could very well lose your head to the guillotine. Almost overnight, high heels completely vanished from Western civilization. For the next 80 years, the Western world walked entirely on flat ground, embracing the sensible, democratic flat slipper. It seemed like the high heel was destined to be nothing more than a bizarre footnote in history. But in the late 19th century, a brand new invention emerged that would bring the heel back from the dead and change the way society viewed women's feet forever. What was this new technology, and how did it turn a forgotten royal relic into an object of global obsession? The resurrection of the high heel didn't happen in a fashion house. It happened because of two major technological breakthroughs: the invention of the modern shoe factory and the birth of photography. By the late 1800s, shoemaking moved away from slow, expensive handcrafting to mass factory production. Suddenly, sturdy heels could be made cheaply and efficiently. At the same time, the explosion of print media and early photography allowed fashion trends to spread across the globe in a matter of days rather than decades. When the Roaring '20s arrived, women's hemlines rose dramatically, exposing the ankle and the foot to the public eye for the first time in generations. The shoe was no longer hidden under layers of petticoats. It was on full display. The heels of the 1920s and 30s were convenient enough for dancing the Charleston or walking down city sidewalks. But everything changed during the dark days of World War II. Leather, rubber, and silk were strictly rationed for the war effort. Shoe designers had to get creative, turning to non-rationed materials like wood and cork, which led to the creation of the classic wedge shoe. But more importantly, the war popularized the pin-up girl. These pin-up models, were almost always photographed wearing slender high heels. When the war ended and the soldiers returned home, the stage was set for a massive fashion explosion. The world was tired of wartime austerity. They wanted luxury, and they wanted height. But there was a major engineering problem. If you tried to make a heel too high and too thin out of traditional wood or leather, it would instantly snap under a person's weight. The fashion world was stuck at a physical ceiling. That is, until a French shoe wizard and a team of aerospace engineers stepped in to pull off the impossible. How did a combination of fighter jet technology and high fashion create the most famous and dangerous heel in human history? The year was 1953. The legendary French designer Christian Dior had just revolutionized women's fashion with his new look, characterized by cinched waists, full skirts, and an ultra-feminine silhouette. But Dior felt his outfits were missing something vital at the bottom. He needed a shoe that could match the dramatic, sweeping lines of his dresses. To create it, he turned to a master shoe designer named Roger Vivier. Vivier created a heel that was sharp, needle-thin, and tall. He named his creation the aiguille, or the needle heel. But the world came to know it by a sharper name, the stiletto. But how did Vivier bypass the laws of physics? The secret was inside the shoe. Vivier utilized an innovative engineering technique borrowed from the post-war industrial boom. He inserted a solid, slender rod of extruded steel directly into the core of the plastic or molded wood heel. This internal steel skeleton gave the heel unprecedented tensile strength. For the first time in human history, a shoe could be as thin as a pencil and successfully support the full weight of a walking adult without buckling. The stiletto took the world by absolute storm. But the stiletto's extreme design came with unexpected consequences. Because the entire weight of a person was concentrated onto a tiny point no larger than a dime, the pressure exerted by a stiletto heel was immense. During the late 1950s and early 60s, stilettos began wreaking havoc across America. They punctured expensive linoleum floors, cracked soft wooden floorboards, and tore up plush carpets. Many public buildings actually placed signs outside their doors with a picture of a crossed-out high heel, officially banning stilettos from entering. As the 1960s gave way to the feminist movements of the 1970s, women's relationship with the heel shifted once again. Activists began criticizing the stiletto as a physical restraint designed by men to limit women's mobility. In response, women traded their sharp needles for massive, heavy platform heels that offered both height and stability on the dance floors of the disco era. As we entered the modern era, the conversation around the high heel shifted from what it looked like on the outside to what it was actually doing to the human body on the inside. Why do millions of women continue to wear a shoe that causes genuine physical pain? And is the high heel finally facing its ultimate extinction? For decades, medical professionals and podiatrists have issued clear warnings about the long-term impact of wearing high heels regularly. When you step into a heel that is 3 or 4 inches high, you force your body to shift its center of gravity entirely forward. Up to 80% of your body weight is jammed directly onto the delicate metatarsal bones of the forefoot. Over time, this unnatural posture can lead to severe health complications. The Achilles tendon can chronically shorten and tighten. Calf muscles can become strained, and the normal alignment of the spine is forced out of whack, leading to chronic lower back pain. Conditions like bunions, hammer toes, and nerve damage are frequent companions to a lifetime of high heel use. Because of these health concerns and a massive cultural shift toward comfort and wellness, we are currently witnessing a seismic shift in the footwear industry. Major global fashion brands have reported skyrocketing sales of comfort-first footwear, while traditional high heel sales have settled into a specialized niche. For many, it seems like the heel is losing its historic grip on society. And yet, the high heel refuses to disappear. From the rugged battlefields of ancient Persia to the highest boardrooms of the modern world, the heel remains one of the most transformative, durable, and fascinating inventions in human history. But the high heel is not the only everyday item in your house born from conflict and death. In fact, a basic tool sitting in your kitchen drawer right now was once used to trigger royal assassinations and split the Christian church in half. Discover the dark history of the fork next.